Welcome to the Mind to Market video series. I'm your host, Steve Traben. I'm joined by Chris Wood, serial entrepreneur and entrepreneur in residence for the Mind to Market program. Thanks for joining me today, Chris.
Thank you, Steve. I'm excited to be here.
Great. So before we jump into the rapid commercialization component of the process, let's refresh our entrepreneurs with the overall process of the program. It starts with intake with Startup Spokane. And then for those that meet the prerequisites and are admitted into the Mind to Market program, next comes the most important phase of the program called rapid commercialization. And this is really where I think the rubber meets the road. This is where we actually pair the entrepreneur up with an entrepreneur in residence, someone that's been there, someone that's done that, someone that knows the pitfalls and the challenges and the obstacles that are going to face every entrepreneur. And Chris, you're one of those individuals in our community, and we're fortunate to have you as an entrepreneur in residence. How about taking a few minutes and talking about this rapid commercialization phase of the program for our entrepreneurs?
Well, Steve, it's really made up of about 6 key parts that we want to make sure that the entrepreneur is addressing and getting ready to make their pitch. First, they really need to get an idea around their business canvas tool, and that really forces them to stop and think about the value proposition. So many of them have these ideas and thoughts about, it's often a emotional or social kind of thing, and we need to back up and say, what job is the product or service we're providing really intended to do? Mm-hmm. And what's the value proposition? What is the customer willing to pay for?
Yeah, and that business model canvas really has 9 critical elements that I think help entrepreneurs understand what gaps and needs they need to fill, right? And it's a great tool that you use diligently in the process.
Right. It gets down into the dirt about what channels are you going to market through, what are the different market segments, who are your suppliers, all those little elements you have to think through. And it's very quick and simple. It's really become a tool to replace the traditional 50-page business plan.
Yeah, exactly. Because really the business model canvas, if completed properly, really then translates into what another component or deliverable of the program, right?
Right. And it just takes some properly phrased questions and really getting down in the dirt, and it doesn't take a lot of time. And one of the things, as you move through this whole commercialization process, it's going to take some pivots, it's going to take some reframing as you go and learn. So we're not going to spend a ton of time on it, but it's enough to provide a pathway or guidance, and it gives you awareness of what's happening. And then after the business canvas model, we'd like to move them into an executive summary. And that's a 1-page, 8.5 by 11 kind of document, and it covers what is my business, simple things like that. And that goes back to, we don't want to say things like, oh, we're, revolutionary kind of product. No, it's like, tell us what your business is. Right. We're a digital advertising company that brings consumers with retailers,
yep.
Things like that.
Yeah, and Chris, I've watched you in action. I mean, you are asking these entrepreneurs the hard questions. You're making them think. This is not an easy ride. I will say that this process, we're trying to get an entrepreneur from idea to being prepared to go in front of our Mind to Market investors in like 2 weeks, maybe 2 to 4 weeks. But this is a very accelerated process where you're working with that entrepreneur hand in hand, checking in with them almost on a daily basis, and also bringing the likes of subject matter experts into the fold as well, right?
Right. We have a great pool of people here in Spokane that are volunteering their time, and we'll sit down and spend much more time. In the EIR role, I try to touch base with them, how are you coming along? But it really goes back upon the entrepreneur. They have to roll up their sleeves. It's not a 40-hour week. It's a 100-hour week or 2 for these people. They really need to get down and learn and grasp and dig into these things and figure out the questions. And it's a bit of we have Startup Spokane Weekend, and this is an extension of that, and it's getting a little bit more traction, a little bit more depth. And so it's very similar. We don't get wrapped around the axle on things, but we got to be clear and how they're going to go forward and who's their target market and what channel and how are you going to communicate to those.
And what's this all? This is all driving to an outcome of the rapid commercialization phase. So talk a little bit about what you're coaching these entrepreneurs to get to what end.
So once we kind of knock out that business canvas model, they have clear targeted customers, the channels, how they're going to get there. Then they begin to build out an action plan, and that's the final part of their pitch deck. So they're going to take their executive summary and really build that into their pitch deck. Is what, by building that executive summary, there's about 10 points in that becomes their pitch deck, and at the end of their pitch deck, they're saying, here's my minimum viable product. Here's what it's going to look like. Here's my budget, my timeline, what I'll need to get that going. And then here's my go-to market strategy for that product and a timeline and budget and resources needed for that. So that really rounds out their deck, and that's what they need to have pulled together and ready to present to the Mind to Market Investment Fund.
And we, as part of this video, what I want to make sure people understand is that we're talking about a 5 to 10 minute pitch or presentation to these investors, and so you've got to build a compelling case in a very short amount of time.
Right, and that's the three things we really hit on: being clear about what your business is. I am what kind of company, a software, technology, things like that. And then 2, what are the compelling parts of your business that are different than anybody else in the world? And 3, credibility. What are the numbers? What research? What is someone already trying it and using it? Where did this idea come from? And is there someone backing it already? Endorsements, things like that. So those are the really 3 key things we put in there too. And yes, I push for 10 minutes.
Yeah, and I think our investors appreciate that. And this is really leading into the pre-seed investment fund, which we hope, if an entrepreneur goes through the rapid commercialization phase of the program with an EIR such as Chris or others, that they'll end up in a position where they can make that presentation. Chris, a great high-level understanding of the rapid commercialization phase. And for you entrepreneurs that are interested in learning more about Mind to Market as a program, I hope you'll visit us at startupspokane.com or email startup@greaterspokane.org. And I hope you'll watch the remaining Mind to Market program videos because, again, they will provide great information, insights, and expectations of what you can expect to experience as you go through the program itself.